Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Rob. And listen, I'm a guy who's been making pizzas for a number of years now, probably nearing a decade. Started in the backyard with a brick oven that I built myself, which I really enjoy, but honestly haven't used in a while because, into the market came Gozney and Uni, which I've gotten on board with. I started out with the Uni Coda 16 and like that oven. And over a couple of years of using it, the dome came out, which was a little bit more expensive than I wanted to spend. And I understand it was a dual fuel or a multi-fuel kind of oven. And I just didn't think I needed it. But then Gozney released that Arc XL, and I was on board right away. When it got released and we had a local shop here that got them in stock, I purchased one. So I say that to say I'm a pizza guy. I really love pizza. And ovens are important. I think sometimes there's this misconception that oven is the most important part of making good pizza. And I would tell you that's false. The most important part about making good pizza is what we're going to talk about today, and that's the pizza dough. Having good dough is so important to the results you're going to get out of these great ovens that we can get now for our backyards. And what we're doing today is just a dough recipe that I call it kind of the foundation of pizza dough. And the reason I say that is we're going to use some simple math. We're going to use a hydration level that for the beginning type pizza maker, dough maker, it's not super hydrated, but it's at a very good level. And I'll just tell you what it is. It's 63% hydration. We're going to get into that in more detail here in just a few minutes. So 63% hydration, which can still be handled. A newer kind of dough maker can work with this hydration level. It's just something that is very consistent when I make this. The first thing I like to do is to do a poolish. And I do this for a 24-hour room temperature fermentation when I do a poolish. And you're wondering, well, what is a poolish? A poolish is just simply pre-fermenting some dough to get this yeasty, bready, get kind of all of this bacteria and things working together to make this beautiful smell that's going to flavor and make this dough taste so good. So how do we do that? So flour, very important. What I mean by very important is use a quality flour. I'm using the all-purpose King Arthur flour. What I love about King Arthur is you get your protein level of the flour. And on this one, very good protein level. We're at 11.7 for this type of flour. I also use the bread flour sometimes, and I'll use a combination of both, and it's 12.7. So both have a very good protein level for building that gluten structure. And I say a very good flour. King Arthur is very good. I'm not saying you have to use King Arthur. I like it. I like talking about it because it seems to be readily available everywhere in the States at least. So I always recommend King Arthur as being something you can find pretty easy. Doesn't mean you can't use a 00 flour, a Tipo 00 flour, a Caputo flour from Italy. Any quality flour is going to work very, very well. But I would just say use a quality flour. So we're going to do equal parts flour to equal parts water with just a splash of yeast. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do 300 grams of flour, 300 grams of water, 1 gram of yeast, and that's going to be our poolish that we'll leave on the counter for 24 hours at room temperature. All right, let's do that real quick. All right, so I've pre-measured my flour. So this is 300 grams of flour that's going to go in. Let's get this out of the way. And then I've got 300 grams of water that we're just going to pour in. And then I'll take my scale. I'm going to tare that out, which tare means zero out. I'm going to grab my yeast from the refrigerator, and I'm using an active dry yeast. I'm using the Fleischmann's, and I'm just going to, it's not very much, a gram, so boom, I'm at 1.1 grams. I can live with that. All right, 1.1 grams of yeast in, so I'm going to take this off the scale, move that out of the way. I'm going to grab a spoon, and all we're going to do, I mean, this is so simple, because we have equal parts water and equal parts flour, this kind of incorporates really easily and pretty quickly. And I'll tell you what, this is a step, part of making good pizza dough is planning ahead, knowing that you want to have pizza. And the other thing I'll tell you is this recipe I use for French bread, I use for loaf bread, I use for, all kinds of different breads that I make just to have around the house as well. I think you'll find once you start making pizza dough, you're going to get into bread making. It's just kind of this natural progression, and you're going to love it. All right, so you can see here, we're getting this kind of mixed up really well. I want to get it off all these sides. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of make sure we got coverage at the bottom, kind of spread it out a little bit, like I've got right there. Kind of clean off our spoon. And once you get it done, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like that. All right, then all we're going to do is put a lid on this. And just let time pass. Time will do its thing, and magic is going to happen in this container. All right. Obviously, you're going, well, now we can't make dough. Well, I planned ahead and did one yesterday, so we'd be ready for today. So you can see what this looks like here. We've got the brand new batch, and then we've got what's been sitting out on the counter for a day. You might be wondering why I have this on a towel. Well, when you have granite or marble or kind of stone countertops, it can get very cold. I'm touching this now, and we're in the middle of summer, and it's cold to the touch. You really don't want the yeast, the flour, the water, and the yeast to be on a cold surface. That kind of slows down the process of, it's called a cold fermentation. It really slows it down. You can do it for a much longer period of time. We want this to get active. So you can put it on a wood, cutting board. You can put it on a wood table. I just choose to put a towel underneath it. The point being, don't put it on a cold stone surface overnight or all day because that will really slow down and you won't get the results that you actually want. Now, I like to do it for 24 hours. That's where I think you really get the development of some really good fermentation. But that being said, you could do this for, 10, 12 hours, 8 hours, and it would still be fine. You're still going to get a better result than just making a quick, dough. I think the poolish really adds some flavor to it at that. I'd go at least 8 hours, and anything more than that, you're just getting better and better. Okay. Just take a look at that. Just look at look at this just slowly moving around. I wish we had smell vision because, man, that smells fantastic. Michael Scott, I'm telling you, Michael Scott, if you know, you know. So what we're going to do, we're going to make some dough now. We've got this poolish ready to go. You can see the bubbles in there. It's just active. It's just smells so good. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ready to make some dough. Now, as I said, I did 300 grams of flour, 300 grams of water. So in our total recipe, and let me just put that up here real quick, we're going to have 1,000 grams of flour, 630 grams total of water. That's going to give us that 63% hydration. We're going to do 3% of salt, which is going to give us 30 grams of salt. We're going to do about 15 grams of honey and about 20 grams of olive oil. And I say about because on those two items, I just kind of eyeball it. But if you want to measure it, go right ahead. But you'll see me just kind of eyeball it as I put it in. All right, so first thing we're going to do is let's get our mixer ready. All right, now that you have the recipe, let's start putting our dough together. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this poolish and we're just going to scrape it out of the bowl. Man, that smells good. Michael Scott. All right, once we have our poolish back into the mixing bowl, we're gonna get the mixer set up. So I got the bowl back on. We're gonna attach our dough hook and get that going, lift that up. Now, as I said, we started with, our total recipe, 1,000 grams of flour, 630 grams of water. We know that we already put in 300 grams of flour, 300 grams of water, so we subtract that from our total. So remaining for flour, 1,000 minus 300, I got 700 grams left that I need to put in. Got that right here. And then I've got 330 grams of water, right? Because I had 630, 300 already in my poolish. Leaves me 330 grams of water. Got that right here. So what I like to do is just kind of turn this on to about 2 on the mixer. And, because of the poolish and that water, it's got a nice, it's loose, but it's not as loose as I would like it to be to start adding additional flour. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of water. And again, this is just kind of by eyeball and feel. And you can play with this as much as you want, Michael Scott. And get it to, however you like to do it. What I will say is this: be patient. Don't rush the process. Something about bread making and dough making you can't do is be in a hurry. You have to take your time and let, science and chemistry and all this kind of do its thing. You can't rush that. So, all right, we can see how this is starting to, the water that I put in is starting to kind of incorporate into the poolish that we had. It's starting to loosen it up a little bit. We're just going to let this go a little bit more. So now we're going to start putting in our flour a little at a time. What we don't want to do here is, you can have the flour a little dry and add water as you go. Don't add too much water too fast. Let it really take its time. So let's start adding some flour. And again, I'm doing this on a lower speed. And we'll start with that. And we're kind of going to play back and forth with the flour and water. And we'll, add a little as we go each time. But what I don't want this to do is to get too wet. So you can see how this is a little bit dry. And could definitely use a little bit more water. So let's go ahead and just put in a little bit more. About that much. And you can see right away how that kind of loosens up that dough. It's looking really good. Liking the way this is looking. Got it a little bit wet again, so we're going to go ahead and add in a little bit more of this flour. Now, you'll hear a lot of people talk about doing a 48 or 72 hour fermentation, cold fermentation. And I do a 48 hour, but the total process, the total time in the process of making this dough is 72 hours because I do that 24-hour poolish. And then what I do is when we're done with this dough, we're going to bulk ferment, put it back into the container that the poolish was in, let it sit in there for 24 hours. Then we're going to come back and we're going to ball that out into the dough balls and into the gram size we want. And we're going to put that into the fridge for another 24 hours. And that's so the 24-hour bulk fermentation, 24-hour ball fermentation, that's our 48-hour cold fermentation of this dough. But the entire process, 72 hours. All right, we're getting back to that dry stage again, so we need some more water. So I got the water. And then once it gets, kind of loose again like this, then we're going to go ahead and add some more flour. We can get the rest of this in there, no problem. So once I get a little bit more of this in, I'm going to go ahead and incorporate the olive oil and then the honey. Actually, reverse that. I'm going to do the honey and then the olive oil. Tell you what, it is a process. Takes a little time, but worth it at the end. This is starting to work. We'll do a little bit more water. Now let's do our honey. And you heard me say honey, and you heard me say olive oil. The salt, you know, I've heard different people say different things as far as don't put it in at the beginning, don't put it in at the middle, you know, put it in at the end. Some people say it doesn't matter. For whatever reason, I put it in at the end. I've just kind of gotten into that habit, so it's kind of my process for this recipe. I don't think it's going to hurt anything if you want to put it in earlier, just so you don't forget. But I put it at the end, so you'll see me add the salt towards the very end as we're finishing this dough. Go a little bit more flour. A little bit more water. And you notice the speed that I have the mixer on is, right now I'm on 1. Here in a minute, once I get everything into the mixing bowl, I'll take that up to a medium, probably a 4, and let it finish the process. You don't want to go too fast because it's important. I'm not going to get into all the geeky science stuff of dough, although I will say just remember not to go too fast because you don't want the dough to heat up too much. Starting to look good. Let's go ahead and get our olive oil in. I'll put my first, call it 10 grams, and then I'll let that get incorporated, then I'll add my second 10 grams. All right, you can see dough's coming together nicely. Looking good, olive oil just went in. So we're gonna add the rest of this flour, incorporate the rest of this water, get the salt in, and we're gonna be getting close to finishing here. All right, let's go with this flour. And then we're going to do this water very slowly. Let this kind of... Okay, while the dough is still kind of wet here, that's why we're still on low, I'm going to start to incorporate the salt that you can see me putting in. And we'll get all this salt in. I do a little at a time just because I want to make sure in my mind I'm thinking a little at a time. It's going to get it kind of distributed around the dough a little bit better. I think it works. I don't know. Just my process. Okay, dough's looking good. What we want it to do now is kind of build a little bit of that gluten. So we're going to turn up the speed. And I've got it on, that's 3 right there. Let's let it go for a couple minutes, and we'll see how it looks. I'm going to let you come in and take a look right now. So yeah, coming together nicely. You can tell when the dough is getting done when it pulls all the flour off the sides of the bowl. You can see that that bowl is getting, pretty clean. So, looking pretty good. Okay, our dough's looking really good. We're gonna give it about 30 more seconds, then we're gonna turn it off. We're gonna get it out of the mixing bowl, and we're gonna get it back into our proofing dish, which is this large 5 or 6 quart container. All right, we turned her off. We're gonna lower this down. I'm gonna grab let's take the dough hook off. I grab my dough scraper. Just gonna kind of get this dough. All in, that was about, what was that? About 20 minutes from starting the poolish to getting it to this point where we're ready for the bulk fermentation. So it's not too bad. It's really not. 20 minutes of your time for great pizza, pretty good trade-off. All right, we do need to get a little olive oil in here, so let's do that, just a little bit. Grab a paper towel, and we're going to just kind of grease this up. All right, let's pull this off here. Get this here, and we're just gonna dump this in. Oh yeah, that dough, I can just tell by the feel of it as I handle it that it's very nice dough. I don't really need to put any oil on top. I'm just going to dab it with a little. Now, if you look at this, you're going to go, well, it doesn't look super smooth yet. And that's because it needs to still ferment more. And so this next 24 hours of cold fermentation, we're going to come back. You're going to see us then handle the dough, make our dough balls, and you'll see how smooth and nice the texture of this dough is. But you know, when you make pizza dough, 90% of the time, it's time, not your time, just letting time do its thing, getting it in a bowl, letting time pass, and the magic happens without you doing anything. So we're at another point like that where we're going to throw this into the fridge, 24 hours. We'll see you back here in, well, what'll be like. All right, we're back and we have our dough, and this has been cold fermenting in the fridge for 24 hours. Let's get a look at what this looks like. You can see how nice that looks. Boy, how nice that smells. Really looks really good. It's proofed up nicely. What we're going to do now is we're going to form these into our balls. I need to get a scale to do that. Never mind. Got one right here. I thought I put it away. Left it on the counter. I was thinking. So got a scale. We're going to portion this out to 270 gram dough balls each. So we're going to get this dough out. I've cleaned the counter. Just going to put down a little olive oil. Let me get my dough scraper and get this dough. Boom. Got all that out of there. All right. This is our dough. Now you can see as we start to even this big dough ball, as we start to kind of just form it, you see it kind of smooth out a little bit. So we're going to take that, we're going to portion it out, make our dough balls. Now you can use whatever you like to put your dough balls in, and it just needs to be something that you can kind of grease up, Tupperware, plastic, glass, and put a lid on it, or be able to put some, you know, saran wrap or something like that. I like to use these little like restaurant containers, and they come in different sizes, but for something from 250 grams to 300 grams, these work great with a lid. And the reason I like them so well is once you portion them out and you put them in the fridge, you know, when you're getting ready to do pizza night, you know, you're not going to cook all the pizzas exactly at the same time, or at least we don't. So I like to pull out two, have them out for about an hour, hour and a half, and about, you know, after they've been out an hour, and I'm about 30 minutes away from cooking, I'll pull out the next two. So that way, while I'm waiting that last 30 minutes and then starting to cook, I'm kind of timing my dough balls to come out. I do have those dough trays, you know, the big white ones that you've seen, and you put all your dough balls in there, and, you know, it's constantly back to the fridge, out of the fridge, back into the fridge. I just have decided I like this process a whole lot better. It's just more convenient, it's more efficient for me. So just a little suggestion. All right, we got our scale on. We're gonna portion these out real quick. See how close we get. Ooh, a little over. $269.7, that'll work. So I'm going to set that right there. I'll leave that right there. Yeah, this last one's 293, 292.5, so just under 293. Like I said, it's usually a little bit bigger. Michael Scott. All right, what I'm going to do is get these trays ready. Shit, how many did I grab? More than I needed. Thought I had 6. There's my 6. Grab a paper towel. And what we're going to do is just a little splash of oil in every one of these. Oil on my hands. And we're going to make dough balls. So I like to just pinch it into a ball like that, and then form it up. Now is when you start to see, we were talking earlier about the smoothness of the dough. Now you can start to see that the dough is a lot smoother, and we get it where it's closed up on that back side. And we're just gonna put that in there. All right, that's our dough balls. That's as simple as it is. I will then take, what I use to kind of lubricate the container. I'll just kind of put a little oil on top just in case these rise and hit that lid. They don't stick, and they're easy to take out when we're ready to make pizza. So that's it. We're gonna close these up, back into the fridge for another 24 hours. And then it's pizza time. So that's the end of this video. Thanks so much for joining on this episode, Food, Wine, and Whiskey. If you haven't already, please like the video, hit the notification bell. You'll get it notified when I put out new videos. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already, man. It really helps the channel. Really, really do appreciate it. So thanks so much for joining. We'll see you on the next one when we are baking pizzas with these doughs.